Is it almost 12 weeks since my second child was born? Yes. And am I just getting around to making a birth video? Yes. I had no idea how difficult it would be to find a spare 10 to 20 minutes with two children, and it has proved 12 weeks worth of difficult, but here we go. I did a birth video, a birth story video with my first baby who was born 3 years ago, and I wanted to do one for this baby too. I can barely remember the contractions part at this stage, but luckily I wrote them all down on my phone as I was having them. And that is because I was making a log for my husband. He was asleep in the next room and I was trying to give him as much time as possible sleeping so that he wouldn't be tired, because it was like 4 a.m. And I wanted him to be awake the next day so he could help me as much as possible. So I tried to get through as much as I could by myself before getting up and saying, hey, we need to go to the hospital. First of all, I was 10 days overdue. With my first child I was 11 days overdue. We had tried everything to get the baby out, nothing worked, just like last time. I ended up seesawing a lot, going on a seesaw on the playground with my 3-year-old. Nothing worked. So I had a membrane sweep on day 9 days overdue, and then I went into labour within like 13 hours later, but obviously I might have been just ready to pop, so who knows if it was the sweep that helped. Anyway, it was 4:20 a.m. when I had my first contraction. That was intense. I'd had a couple a few minutes before that and they weren't really anything, and then 4:20 a.m. had a very intense contraction, 4:25 a.m. and then 4:29, 4:34, 4:38, and then I'm like, I've put notes here saying, is that my water's breaking? I'm not sure. 4:38, more water trickling. I've written here, I really want to make it to at least 5 a.m. before waking Pep up so that he sees the time and it isn't the middle of the night. Ideally it would be 6 a.m. plus, but let's see. Contractions need a little breathing through but are nothing major. 4:41 a.m. I've put bloody show just fell out onto the towel I've placed under myself. Lovely. 4:47 a.m. that one required a lot of breathing. And then 4:54 I've put possibly another one, not sure, as I'm moving position. So at exactly 5 a.m, I think it was like 2 minutes past 5, I went into my husband's room and said, hello, I think that it will be time to go to the hospital in the next half an hour or so. Just thought I'd let you know so you can get your stuff together. He got his bag. We went in a car to the hospital in London, North London, and we went into a triage. So obviously this is during pandemic times, and we were told that my husband would be allowed to be with me in the room for the whole time during the birth, and we got there and they said no, he can't be in the triage room. So I had a midwife who I think was fairly new. I thought she was brilliant, but she was not confident. She kept kind of second guessing herself and like asking for help, which is obviously totally fine, but I could hear her saying, oh, I don't know if I'm doing this right, oh, I'm not sure about this and that, and I just thought, oh, I'm glad it's not my first baby because that would kind of worry me. I was very kind of sure of myself, so it was fine. She kept leaving the room to go and get people to check what she was doing, and at one point she left me for quite a long time and the contractions were getting really strong, and I think that sort of slowed me down a little bit, but overall it was still very fast. We were in the triage room. We got there, I think we got to the hospital about 5:30. That triage room I was in from 5:30 till I think about 6:45. I think it was about 6:45 when we were transferred from the triage room into the actual, what's it called, birthing room. So this is in a birthing centre inside a hospital. I chose that because, and I did the same last time, because I feel really comfortable in hospitals, and I felt like if anything were to go wrong I would feel more comfortable knowing that I'm in a hospital and all I need to do is get in a lift and transfer a floor, rather than rush in an ambulance from a home birth to a hospital. It's just how I felt last time, it's how I felt this time, and I'm really happy with that decision. It doesn't mean that it can be any less natural, as I will go into in a moment. So we went into the room, as I said, probably 6:45, maybe 7. I got naked straight away because I don't want my clothes on. It's really hot in those rooms. They make it really hot for the baby so that babies are not too cold when they're born. And I saw that the birthing pool was there, which is really good because that's what I wanted. In my last pregnancy I was strep B positive. In this pregnancy I was not strep B positive. Strep B, if you're interested in it, just have a Google. It's a big long thing. It's a bacteria that anyone can carry, and it comes and goes. You can be positive and negative at any given time. positive or negative. So the GP test is only about 50% accurate. That was what I read in my last pregnancy. And it's a urine test. If it's positive, then it's pretty much yes, you do have strep B, but if it's negative, there's like a 50% chance that it might be inaccurate. And strep B, if you pass it on to the baby during birth, it can lead to things like, I want to say, like pneumonia and infections and really serious things. So I wanted to make sure I didn't have strep B, because if I did have strep B, it would mean having antibiotics during labour, and I had that in my first pregnancy, but because I'm allergic to penicillin, they gave me vancomycin, which in my reading, obviously I'm no expert, but in the reading that on the research that I did reading online, I found that it seems that vancomycin has not been proven to cross over to the placenta. They don't know if it makes a clear difference to the baby, but they give it to you anyway, which then disrupts the mother's own microbiome. Antibiotics disrupt your microbiome for they change the gut flora for up to 2 years, I think, and I just really wanted to avoid antibiotics if I could. So this time, like last time, I did the vaginal and rectal swab, which is 90 something% accurate, and you should do it as close to giving birth as possible. So they say do it at 35 weeks, because you don't know if you're going to go into labour at 37 weeks, to avoid not having done the test at all, because my baby was so late last time and I just kind of didn't feel like this one was shifting either. Quite late in the pregnancy, I left it until 38 weeks and I did the test at 38 weeks and it came back negative. And for me that was enough reassurance that at birth I would be strep B negative, but I could have been positive by the time I gave birth, because I gave birth at 41 plus 3. Anyway, I didn't need antibiotics this time because I was strep B negative, and so I opted for a water birth. Last time I didn't opt for a water birth because there was kind of mixed advice, because if you have antibiotics, IV antibiotics, it's going into your hand. You want to then keep your hand out of the water, and I thought that was just a bit much faff last time as well, because they did say that you could have a water birth technically if you keep your hand out of the water. Anyway, so I got in the water straight away and I absolutely loved it, because I didn't get in the water at all last time. I got in the water, I chose not to have gas and air or try any kind of pain relief. I'm very hard-headed, and it's the same as I did last time. I just decided to breathe through it. I didn't do any actual hypnobirthing. I didn't get into that last time or this time. I just did my own meditation, my own sort of little prayers that I like to do, and it was just a case of breathing, and I didn't want to touch my husband this time. Last time he had to fully hold me up for hours as I pushed down all of my 70 kilos on him. This time he did not have to have my 78 kilos bearing down on him as I was in the water. They had a little metal bar on the bath, and I held the bar and I just pushed on all fours, mainly in the bath. They wanted to keep monitoring the baby, and a few times they asked me to be on my back. Even in the water I didn't like being on my back, and I do not like it as a birthing position. I really don't like it. I think it goes against gravity. I think it doesn't feel natural. I much prefer to be on all fours. I was on all fours for pretty much the whole time. There's not really much to say about this birth. It was really simple. I just pushed and pushed, and then the baby was born at 8:30. So first contraction was 4:20, baby was out at 8:30. Pep actually videoed when the head was born in the water. Pep videoed the rest of it because he knew I'd want to see it, and it was really cool to see. I'm like crazy, just roaring, and I roared this little baby out. Well, big baby. So pushed the baby out. It was a boy. We did know that. We did have a scan, what's it called, identifying the sex scan, and he was 9 pounds 5 ounces, which is large, considering I am 5'3" and usually outside pregnancy weigh around 50 kilos. He was very large. And I had a 1st degree tear, which is just the skin, not the muscle, but they did give me 1 or 2 stitches. She said, I can't remember what she said. She basically said it's a 1st degree tear, but you still need to have a stitch or 2. And the stitch this time was more painful than the birth, because she actually put one of the stitches in where it wasn't anaesthetized. You know what I mean. She injected me, and then the stitch wasn't working, and then she said, let me just go a bit lower. She was like, you might feel this one a bit because there's no anaesthetic there, and she hooked it in, and I was like, fuck. And I don't really swear, and I didn't swear throughout the whole birth, but then I swore. Anyway, that one didn't work, so she said, okay, I just need to do it again, I'm really sorry, but I'm just gonna have to do it one more time. And I was like, oh wow, okay, this is really painful. This is like, it's not a thin thing, this is like a hook going into the space between my vagina and my butthole, or what is now all one piece, I don't know. So I was like, okay, breathe. I said, can you just tell me just before you put it in? She went, yep, sure. And just pushed it in, and I just went, it was so bloody painful. Oh my goodness, so much more painful than birth. The birth was like, breathe and push and breathe and push, and like, I like the pain. Like I said last time, it's a pain that feels like it's supposed to be there. It's not. So then I don't register it as pain. I register it as like being taken to another planet, like just on another kind of level. And it's almost a nice feeling. It's just really, really intense. But the stitch was pain. So also last time I almost had to have that injection where they inject you to make the placenta come out. It had been a full hour, and then the midwife had gone out to get the injection to make the placenta come out because it wasn't coming out fast enough. I think because they took the baby and put her on one of those little things where the red light is to keep them warm. They didn't let me hold her. Sorry, but and this time I was like, no way, I want my baby on me for the whole time until that placenta is birthed. I don't want you to take the baby away. And they let me hold the baby for the whole time, and I was feeding him. He latched on really quickly, and yeah, the placenta came out, I think about after 45 minutes or so. And I chose this time to keep the placenta on for longer. Apparently it helps to deliver more hemoglobin to the baby. Once again, no kind of expert, not qualified in any way. Don't take my word for anything that I'm saying. Look it up yourself, because it's all a blur and I don't even remember what I looked up 12 weeks ago. But I think it gives more hemoglobin to the baby. But there's a possible chance that you can give them, that there's a higher chance of jaundice, I think. Anyway, we kept the placenta on for about an hour and a half. So I kept it on till it was birthed, and I kept it on for a bit longer, and it was about an hour and a half in total that he had the placenta on him. And he was pink for a really long time. He was such a pink baby. Every health visitor, every midwife was like, wow, he looks really healthy, he's so pink. So it sounds like it's a good thing, I don't know. He was a healthy boy. And then so he was gave birth at 8:30 in the morning. Placenta was out at like 9:15 or something like that. We then got transferred to a labour ward, which was different from last time. A postnatal ward, sorry, which was different from last time. Last time we had our own private room, not paid for private room, just an NHS private room, which was lovely. This time we had other people around us, and it was weird. We were just listening to like all these different ways that these new parents around us were talking intimately with their partners and worrying about their babies, because the two people across and next to me were first time parents, which I quickly found out because I could hear everything they were saying. Pep and I weren't really talking, like we were just having a little natter, whereas the ones next to us were chatting on the phone to their friends, and the ones across from us were fully arguing. It was really just, oh, it was really sad actually. We got to know all about them, unfortunately, and it was not very private at all. Anyway, when I was resting, so we asked the hospital if we could go home that day, because I had my 3-year-old and I'm still breastfeeding her, and I'd never been away from her. I've never been away from her overnight at all. So I said, oh, can we try to go home as quickly as possible? And they said, yes, we'll try to get you out by around 2 p.m. We're like, oh, fantastic, that'd be so great if we could be back with her by 2 p.m. And then there was a load of admin mess ups, and they accidentally put him down as a girl and all of this, and they had to change everything, and it ended up taking absolutely ages, and ages for them to do his newborn checks where they check the reflexes and hips and stuff. And we ended up getting out at about 7 p.m, which was quite frustrating, but I'm still really appreciative, because they do keep you there overnight apparently, and we weren't kept there overnight. A couple of hours before we left, I got up to go to the toilet, and I just felt a big blob in like next to my ankle, like hot, and I just freaked out, and I like pulled my trousers back, and it was just a blood clot probably like this big. It looked like a big kind of liver on the floor. Freaked me out, didn't realise what it was, because I don't remember having those last time. And I got a nurse, and I was like, what's going on? She was like, oh, you've got good clotting, great. And I was like, fantastic, nothing to worry about, moving on. I had another one, I had a few of those over the next couple of days, but smaller. Anyway, we were out by 7 p.m, got the baby home, all well and good, and that was that. So yeah, really happy experience. Oh, the other thing was that was really nice, was that at 7-ish or 8 maybe, yeah, it must be 8 o'clock, the midwives switched over their shifts, so we had two midwives with us for the time that we were giving birth, and then they switched to the day staff instead of the night staff at 8 o'clock. And it was really nice because the night staff decided that they wanted to come back and watch the rest of the birth because it was the end of their shift, and they said that they never get to see unmedicated births or like pain relief free births. So they both went and changed into their normal clothes and came back just to watch the end of the birth, which was really nice, and see him get weighed and stuff. And I just felt like really honoured that even though they've got a really tiring, really demanding job, that they wanted to stay and experience the birth of this baby. It was really, really nice. I was very touched. Everything was great. And then 4 days in, we had a health visitor around who realised that his belly button stump had gotten infected. Not hugely, just a bit pussy and a bit gross. And she was like, you just need to go to the accident and emergency, the baby accident and emergency, which is kind of scary. So we went there, and he ended up having, just because he's a little baby, he's a newborn, they had to treat it really seriously. And he was on intravenous antibiotics for 4 days. And then we switched to oral antibiotics for another 7 days after that. But honestly, it was so exhausting, and now I have even more sympathy for parents who have to keep going back into hospitals with their babies, or his babies are staying in hospitals. It's just awful. To go from day one, when we just had our baby, they said, can you get out of the room and go to the postnatal room now? And I was like, yeah, sure, just give us a minute. And I just picked up my baby and walked out, and I was just on the way to the postnatal room myself, and a midwife ran up to me like, no, you can't, you might faint, something, you need to rest, you're not allowed to walk, no, you're not allowed to walk with the baby in case you faint or something. We have to push the baby in a cart and you have to walk separately. Going from that on day one to 4 days later being expected to just go take your baby to hospital even if no one's around to drive you there is just nuts. Like, it was so difficult. I actually had to walk with him in a sling at 7 days old, and it took me an hour and a half to walk to the hospital because it wasn't the local hospital. It wasn't the local London hospital that we gave birth to him in, because they didn't do the antibiotics there or something. They told me basically that I had to go to, or it wasn't open on that day. So we had to go to a different hospital, and it took me an hour and a half to walk there with him in a sling. I'm like bleeding everywhere, and it made my bleeding so much more heavy because I had to walk for an hour and a half. It's just crazy to go from being so like, oh, you can't even walk with your baby, you can't hold your baby on day one, to a few days later being like, yep, you've got to go to hospital with your baby, take your baby there by any means possible. Anyway, it was exhausting. Oh, and then I realised that he had tongue tie, because he latched on well, but his tongue was like, his tongue movement was like this. Like, he couldn't do this. He could only get it like this. So when he was latching on, he was going, and it was just really sad to watch. And my friend had had a baby with tongue tie, and she recommended a specialist, so we went there and got it sorted out quicker than the NHS, and it cost an arm and a leg, like much more than I could usually afford to pay for anything. But I felt like it was really important because I have an oversupply of milk and I get blocked ducts really easily, and I didn't want that to happen. So I'm really glad that I got it done. I might talk about that in a separate video because it's a separate issue. But we then had to, after his 11 days of antibiotics, we then had to do his tongue tie surgery, and then 21 days of tongue tie exercises and lip tie exercises. He had a posterior tongue tie and a lip tie. And then overlapping somewhere, he got an ingrown toenail, which again is nothing. It had the tiniest bit of like kind of pus, just a really, really tiny bit. But they were like, you need to make a GP appointment right away. We're not living at home at the moment. We're living elsewhere because our house is being renovated. So we hadn't even been able to register at a GP yet ourselves. And then it took us ages to register, in which time they just said you need to go to the baby urgent care urgent care, yeah, which is not the same as A&E, but it is like a different unit. He got seen quickly. They told me that he needed more intravenous or no, oral antibiotics, one of the two, can't remember. And I practically begged. I was like, please, is there anything else that you can do? Is there like an antibiotic cream? Is there anything else we can do to avoid him being on antibiotics? Because all of this strep B care, I took probiotics for the whole pregnancy thinking, if I do this, maybe I won't have strep B, maybe I can somehow help myself get rid of strep B. And it just so happened that I didn't have strep B, and I was really happy. And then as soon as he was born, he was on antibiotics, which was really frustrating. And then they wanted to give him more antibiotics, and I was like, please, 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 please. And she went and consulted and came back in the room and said, it's very minor, it's a very minor infection, do the antibiotic cream for 7 days and see how you go. Goodness me, I didn't have any of these problems with my first child, so I was just very exhausted by it and not really expecting it. But they're minor issues. I mean, tongue tie is pretty minor. The navel thing, it wasn't a very bad infection, it was minor, and the toe was minor as well, but it was just tiring, like trying to establish a new routine, trying to settle in with a 3-year-old and a newborn, trying to pay the 3-year-old enough attention was really difficult, because I wanted to give special time to her and do activities with her and stuff, but I had to keep going back to hospital with him. Anyway, that's about it. It's generally overall a very happy story, and we settled in really well, and we're very, very grateful to the NHS staff. Didn't have to wear a mask or anything during birth either, by the way. All good. My husband did have to wear a mask in the room, so not scary, not negative, just a really happy, positive, natural birth experience in hospital. And yeah, I just want to kind of encourage other people and say that natural births can happen in a hospital. You can have a pain relief free hospital birth if all goes well, but you've also got the support there and the doctors there and all the teams there that you need, just as one floor away, or maybe even on the same floor if you need them, rather than being in a home birth and then kind of panicking and having an ambulance take you to hospital. So I think that the NHS is an incredible resource. I know in other countries you have to pay, so I'd probably be a lot more likely to home birth in another country if it's cheaper. But here it's free, and I think it's incredible. And I'm really, really grateful. So yeah, another positive birth experience. I want another baby. Let's see if my husband allows for a third birth story to happen. If you're watching this, Pep, let's do it. Okay, right, that was weird. Bye. Thanks for watching.